coming up actually in just about 10 or 15 minutes or so. We're going to move into a room we've got reserved in the library here to talk about planning the March 1st action for this campus. And so these are actions that are centered around the issue of budget cuts and fee hikes, but certainly freedom of speech and freedom of assembly fall under that as well, because we need freedom of speech and freedom of assembly to effectively protest fee hikes and budget cuts. If we're going to get thrown in the slammer every time we try to say something that the administration doesn't like, then we won't have a very effective movement. So I think that'll be part of March 1st as well. It certainly was a part of the UC Regents protest that happened on the 19th, I guess it was, of this month, last week. I don't know if anybody was there or have seen the videos of that protest at UC Riverside. It's not just SDSU. This is happening at schools all over the state, all over the country, trying to repress those of us who are unhappy with our education suffering at the same time that we've got administrators like President Hirschman making almost $500,000 a year.
Other people love you.
Love you too, dog.
See you, Ben. Yeah, I could do.
There are interoccupied calls about the college actions that are going all around the whole country. I guess around, I think it's just California, but it's in the whole country too. I have not had it on the calls. So yeah, there are interoccupied calls about college.
Yeah.
John was speaking.
I think going back to the arresting thing, one of the things we do at OSD is we kind of make fun of it. Like, from what I understand, there's a jail committee, people who've been arrested. So I think getting arrested is an inevitability. So I think that the more lightly we make of it, like, obviously don't go out trying to get arrested. That's just dumb. If you go out trying to get arrested, you're going to get arrested. But for those who get arrested for random BS, I think it should be something we make light of, because the more serious you take it, the more serious it becomes. And obviously there are some cases that are different, but I think for the most part, like, getting arrested for protesting is something that should be not only expected, but maybe something to be proud of. You got arrested for practicing your First Amendment rights. So, I mean, maybe that's something else we think about when we're talking to others.
Just as a point of information on that, I know that DC passed them out. I know they passed them out to the members of OSD who got arrested. They make little patches with they're kind of like graffiti doves on them. And they hand those out to anyone who's been arrested, and you wear your patch with pride that you got arrested fighting for this movement.
Where do I get it?
What it is it's the Phoenix.
Fish has one, and we're working on duplicating that.
Yeah.
Also, I collect people's mugshots, because when you do get arrested, they give you a sticker on your possessions bag, which has your mugshot. So when you do get arrested, have fun with your mugshot. Maybe your only mugshot that you guys
Use it as your avatar.
Yeah, definitely.
They didn't give me a sticker.
You get arrested?
Yeah.
I think John makes a good point about what we need to think about being arrested, but that's why this issue with the student code of conduct is so important. Is that right now, I mean, Ashley, your charges have been the legal charges have been dropped, right? But so what's negatively affecting Ashley in her study and in her work right now is simply the rules of the university. I think it's absurd that the student rights organization, the student rights committee, it seems like they're not too concerned with Ashley's rights to free speech. So maybe that's an extra level of or a different kind of repression that people need to worry about on campuses, that people need to fight back against on campuses. So I like what folks said earlier about specifically addressing the student code of conduct as it's used to suppress protest. If we can get rid of that obstacle to protest, then all we you have to worry about is those arrests which hardly ever end up in charges being filed, right? Because they're bullshit. So.
And Ashley, were your charges dropped or just not filed?
They're dropped.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Are they dropped or did they not file any charges?
As of yesterday, they dropped them.
Okay.
So they weren't filed until yesterday, and then yesterday they officially dropped them. But I'm not put myself on staff. I'm gonna stand. So one of the students that got arrested with me on November 16th is actually being charged with assault with a deadly weapon for breaking the door, which is apparently a deadly weapon, assault on a police officer, and he's being charged with $32,000 in restitution for breaking a door, which he didn't do. But basically, when the school tried to come after me, and then there was all this, solidarity around it, and they knew it wasn't going to work, then they moved on to him. So they're looking for someone to make an example out of, and so Seth is just the next victim of this. So, I just hope that you all can find out the information on this. I think it's the LA the DA of LA that's going to go through with these charges. So if you could call him and fight on Seth's behalf in the name of OSD, I'm show that we're in solidarity with him, that, we recognize what they're doing and really fight with Seth as well, because he's going through the same thing that I'm going with, just trumped up charges to find an example. So his name is Seth Newmeyer, Newmeyer. If you want to Facebook him or figure out something to do for him,
You can change the time of the event and also add his name to the end of the Stand with Ashley. So basically it's going to be Stand with Ashley and Seth. And then we change the information, put the information for LA guy, and keep the information for this guy so he doesn't think he got away with it. And yeah.
What school is Seth at?
UCLA.
Okay.
Ashley, could you maybe give us a really brief summary of what happened to you in Long Beach?
Yeah, I'm trying to be brief. So there was a meeting going on inside with people talking at the Board of Trustees meeting, and then somebody was on the mic. Chancellor Reed didn't like what he had to say, so he turned the mic off. At that point, they started a mic check, which only makes sense, right? So they started a mic check, and then were escorted out of the meeting. And then there were about 200 of us that were outside of the meeting because of fire marshal rules or whatever. So they met us on the outside. We were trying to keep the doors to the meeting open so that they could hear what we were saying, because they were still meeting, the Board of Trustees. So I had my back to the police officers. They did a round of pepper spray. We were still there. Then they started hitting us with batons. So my back was to the police officer, and they were hitting me in the back. And then another gentleman, his name's Andrew, saw it was happening, and he came over to stand in between me and the police officer. And just for doing that, they pulled him in by the hair and arrested him. Then they pulled me in by my backpack. I had a student with me because I'm a TA. She was hugging me, so they kind of pulled us both in. We were both arrested, and then a few minutes later, the door broke, and then they went on a march around the banks nearby, and then after that march, then they arrested Seth for touching the door last. So it was just chaos, and they just were randomly arresting the people in front to make an example out of us, and I just happened to be there. So, and then I was originally actually only charged with resisting arrest, and then when I got out of jail, I had 2 additional charges on my record, and I was like, why? What is the point of this? And it's because apparently it's like when you go to a carnival and you get little animals, and then you can trade them in for the big one. So if you have 3 misdemeanors, it equals a felony. So they were trying to have a felony charge against
had like to talk about ways that we can prepare for the March 1st National Day of Action that's going to take place on this campus and schools all over the country.
Do they all know what the Day of Action is for?
Yeah, it's in defense of public education, against the fee hikes that we're experiencing here, against the attacks on working people's benefits, against the attacks on students' freedom of speech, and really questioning why the administrative salaries are so outrageously high, almost $500,000 for President Hirschman, when supposedly we don't have enough money to have classes that are smaller than, what, 500 students is the one that you're in now. So it's definitely important. Hopefully, some of you guys can join us in the library in there. And does anyone have anything else to add before we adjourn today? Should we do one last mic check?
Let's do it right here while people are watching.
Mic check!
Mic check!
Mic check!
Mic check!
Public universities should be conducive to political activism. Public universities should never bar student voices from the decision-making process that affects the student body. We demand an end to blatant political intimidation of student activists. Jerry Brown has slashed CSU budgets again. And Chancellor Reed is ready to hike tuition. We strongly oppose what this will do to our university. We will protest and we won't accept the use of the student code of conduct to silence us. Let's build for March 1st.
Yeah.